I am single, dating in a city, and living in my 1-bedroom apartment. Why do people feel lost?
G'day friends. Well, the feeling of being lost comes from not knowing where you're going, but for single women, we can map out the future possibilities. Several endgames are on the cards. It can be scary to look at because not everyone wins at the game of life, but you must be willing to face the truth to gain a sense of direction. Just hoping that everything will be okay doesn't work. Too many women have found this out the hard way, as we'll see in a moment.
So I'm turning 33 in a couple of days, and I really thought that I'd be further along by now. Lately, I've been feeling a bit lost and lonely at times.
That doesn't sound great at all. Let's do a quick reality check. Mathematically, there are 6 potential endgames for a woman like this. Well, actually, we could take out a couple. The Empress outcome, where she gets her dream man, can be safely ruled out for most single women over 30. I could also see her still dating in her 40s, which means she probably won't end up as an unseen one, symbolically represented by the death card. Of the 4 remaining outcomes, there are still 2 good ones possibly left if she is able to make a sensible compromise. But her ability to get either one of these is fading while her dating history is growing. So a couple of undesirable endgames loom large. She could make a desperate move and end up with a man she doesn't truly want, following the fate of Persephone in Greek mythology. Or she could go it alone and continue to spend her days contemplating existence as depicted by the High Priestess card in Tarot. But the bigger point here is time waits for no woman, or does it?
I feel like there has been this forced timeline conditioned into us from a very young age. And so we have been told that by the time you reach 30, you should have your entire life figured out. You should be married or on your way to getting married, and then soon afterwards on your way to having kids. I do believe that that timeline is outdated and that narrative is outdated.
Sure. Just forget the wisdom of our elders. What if her new playbook for women was written by feminists and actually only works for men? That would essentially make it a male timeline. As much as everything seems to be changing, history still says that women only have so much time to get it done. So does biology. And older people such as myself see the endgames all around us, whether it's our sisters, friends, past lovers, old classmates, ex-wives, in fact all our female contemporaries. We've seen what happened to them, representing hundreds of real-life case studies. There is an endgame for every woman, and it will become all too real once she's there. Let's see what the 6 endgames are and how women get trapped into fates nobody wants. Note that this first one was the default outcome for most people just a few generations ago. The Queen of Forces is a woman who succeeds in life because she knows her worth and applies similar standards to men. She finds someone close to her level or above, someone she respects and admires, who brings at least as much to the relationship as she does. This match works because while he might not be her fantasy, he's still a strong choice and leaves her satisfied. The tarot image reflects this well. The Queen stands between the sun and the moon, between balancing forces. The masculine and feminine energy brought into a well-matched relationship are comparable in strength, but different in nature. Together, they create harmony. Actress Maggie Gyllenhaal is a good example. She met Peter Sarsgaard at age 24 through her brother Jake, who was already close friends with him. Peter was a respected actor in his own right, and their connection developed naturally. This kind of union used to be far more common. Socializing was local, and you got to know someone in person. Women didn't hold out for the perfect man, waiting for him to appear on a screen. They said yes to a man they genuinely liked and admired, and they did it young while the dating pool was still full of viable matches. This archetype accounts for around 22% of women today, slightly more than 1 in 5. That number used to be closer to 2 in 5 back when marriage was nearly universal and most women married young. These women don't have to be beautiful. In many cases, it's easier if they aren't. What matters is that they see themselves clearly. Women today often reach this outcome only after a period of disillusionment. They start to realize they won't be the Empress. The fantasy fades and reality sets in. To become the Queen of Forces, a woman needs to shed the inflated self-image and anti-male assumptions that modern culture feeds her. She has to recognize her limits and act quickly before her value slips too far. The women who manage it are often those who hold themselves accountable, learn fast, and are brave enough to commit. The Queen of Coins is a woman who succeeds by making a calculation. The man she ends up with is, in some ways, beneath her, at least if his position or role were stripped away. But when everything he offers is taken into account, he advantages her. This can be about money, but it's often more than that. It's about support and contribution. These women win by looking past surface appeal and investing in a man who improves their life. In tarot, the Queen of Coins is also known as the Queen of Pentacles. She sits on a throne surrounded by roses, holding a gold coin that symbolizes value and material stability. At her feet rests a lapdog, a symbol of comfort, loyalty, and domestic life. This is a woman who weighed her options and chose a good life. Cate Blanchett is an interesting and apt example. She married playwright Andrew Upton in 1997 and has stayed with him ever since. He's not famous or conventionally charismatic, but he became her creative partner. Blanchett built a towering career while raising 4 children and managing a stable family life. Upton may not be the man people imagined for her, but he was the man who helped her achieve her dreams. This archetype accounts for just over 1 in 5 mature women today. That's about 1/3 of those who form lasting relationships. They tend to be better looking than their partners. Society may say her man is punching above his weight, but she knows what she's doing. To become a Queen of Coins, a woman needs to see beyond looks and other superficial things and fully appreciate what a man has to offer. This endgame is grounded in realism. She sees the world for what it is and chooses a productive pathway. She grows up fast and makes a wise choice before she gets too old and her value starts to decline. The Empress is the ultimate endgame for many women. This is the stuff of fairy tales. It's when a woman meets her dream man relatively young, locks him down and lives happily ever after, or as close as anyone realistically gets. This archetype runs deep through cultural history. It's Cinderella marrying the prince, it's Snow White awakening to her future king. It's the fairy tale arc where the young woman becomes a wife, a mother, and a queen. She doesn't just get the man, she gets the life, the home, the children, the admiration of others, and the kind of loyalty most women hope for. She was in the right place at the right time with the right mix of beauty, femininity, and compatibility. You see this echoed in the tarot. The Empress card represents fertility, harmony, fulfillment, and natural power. In the Strength card, a serene woman in royal dress calms a lion with presence alone. It symbolizes inner control. And that's the spirit of this archetype, soft power, deeply feminine yet influential. Think of Princess Cate. She met William at university and played the long game. The tabloids mocked her as weighty Cate, but she stayed the course. She got the prince, the family, the crown, and became a living example of this archetype. Princess Mary of Denmark followed a similar path, meeting a literal prince during the Sydney Olympics and rising from obscurity to royalty. But this isn't reserved for royals. The Empress outcome is possible for any woman who connects early with her ideal man and secures him, the kind of man other women want too. This is a rare match, and this path is only open to the top 10% of women. Maybe 1% actually get there. Luck plays a major part, and there is no single script. Matt Damon's wife, Luciana, was a 27-year-old single mother working at a bar when she met the famous movie star. They've now been married for nearly 2 decades and have 3 children of their own. But even luck needs preparation. Some women go after what they want. They aren't passive. They position themselves to be in the right place, and they don't mess around when the right man appears. Still, this path is risky. The dream man for most women will typically have many other options. He may not commit knowing he could do better, and if she waits too long, hoping he'll propose, she might run out of time. Some women spend their best years on the wrong man and never get the ring. Then they hold every man after that to a standard that's no longer within reach. They were almost the Empress, but almost doesn't count. And when the music stops, they can end up in one of the far less desirable outcomes that we'll get to shortly. Let's see why Persephone should unofficially be made the goddess of divorce and marital dissatisfaction. In real life, Persephone is the woman who ends up settling in the darker sense of the word. She pairs off with a man beneath her, at least in comparison to her prime self. In Greek mythology, Persephone is known as the queen of the underworld and the goddess of spring. She spends part of her life above ground in the bloom and vitality of spring, and part of it in the darkness, abducted and forced to be the wife of Hades. That duality mirrors her emotional world. On the surface, she may have a family and routine, but underneath lies regret and resentment. This is a woman who didn't beat the competition from other girls. She didn't get her dream man, far from it. Often she marries late in life when her value in the sexual marketplace has declined and options have dwindled. Rather than face solitude, she grabs the nearest man who offers stability. For a while, she might convince herself it's fine, that he's a good man, or at least a good match, but in most cases, that's just a temporary comfort. Julia Roberts may have ended up here. She married Danny Moder, a cinematographer she met on set when aged 33. While they've stayed married for years, they now live separately. Moder spends a lot of time surfing and seems to enjoy his own space. It's not clear what their arrangement really means. But to the outside observer, it looks like a woman who settled, someone who didn't marry her equal or even close. This outcome is very real for around a fifth of women, but the Persephone analogy lives even larger in the imagination. That's because she represents one of the strongest human fears. Women across all categories, whether they are actually queens of forces or queens of coins, will at times indulge the belief that they are Persephone, that they married beneath themselves, that they deserve more. And this dark fantasy can quietly ruin a relationship. It's a hypergamous reflex linked to narcissism. Women in all kinds of circumstances conjure the idea that they settled, even when it's completely untrue. The delusion gives rise to dissatisfaction, withdrawal, and often divorce, not because the match was wrong, but because the woman becomes convinced that something better was possible. This projection of dissatisfaction onto a relationship is one of the most common emotional drivers of separation today. The women who actually become Persephone in reality have often made simple mistakes. They commit many of the same errors that lead others to end up alone. But what really defines them is a refusal to remain unpartnered. They do what it takes to secure a man and build some sort of life with him. In dark times, he may seem like the devil to her, but he isn't. He's just the outcome of her own choices. The High Priestess is the woman who never lacked options but still ended up alone. She was wanted but unwilling to settle for what was realistically available. In her youth, she may have had beauty and charm, but for one reason or another, bad timing, bad luck, or unrealistic standards, she didn't make the kind of bargain that would secure a lifelong partner. Her fear of becoming Persephone, trapped in a mismatched relationship with a man she doesn't admire, affected her decisions. She refused to trade down as her youth passed her by. By the time her fertile window had closed, she was still single. She may have wanted a traditional family, she may have dreamed of a great love, but the stars never aligned, or she was simply too afraid or skeptical to say yes to the good men she could have had. The High Priestess in Tarot symbolizes intuition and strength through knowledge. Seated between two pillars, she holds the space between opposites, light and dark, seen and unseen. She represents the wisdom found in stillness. For women who end up alone, the card speaks to the good that can come from calm reflection and finding purpose. It is a call to carry yourself with grace and live fully. Charlize Theron ended up here. Beautiful, successful, and admired, she never settled into a long-term partnership. She's had relationships, but none that led to marriage or family. Instead, she adopted 2 children and built a life around her career. At times she has hinted at loneliness, but she also shows strength. She made her choice. While the High Priestess avoids becoming trapped like Persephone, she still misses something. She's not surrounded by family, there's no masculine counterpart by her side, and solitude wasn't part of the plan when she was young. It was the melancholy result of choices made over time and the standards she held on to until the end. The unseen one is the most common female endgame. Around a third of women enter midlife alone, and she is the majority of them. She had options in her youth, but they disappeared faster than she ever imagined. Post-feminist society gave her the illusion of time. So she waited. She focused on education, chased experiences, or spent years with men who were never going to commit. She assumed her value would still be there when she was ready to settle down. But it wasn't. She wasn't blessed with timeless beauty, and her life choices didn't preserve her desirability. She competed with men, grew skeptical of them, and failed to nurture the softer side of herself. She aged and became set in her ways, too inflexible to truly adapt to a man's expectations. She tried lowering her standards, but her value in the dating market declined even faster. Eventually, she found herself alone, with no realistic options left. This archetype is represented by the Death card in Tarot. It marks the end of a youthful feminine phase and the passage into something else. That ending comes with a kind of grief. This isn't a transformation she chose, but one she must now face. She may strive for mental calm, build a purposeful life, or throw herself into new roles, but deep down, the regret accumulates. It shows up in quiet moments, in the feeling of being invisible to men, in the knowledge that the window has closed and that she lacks the emotional backing of a life partner and children. She fears having to always live alone. She is the unseen one, not because she was never noticed, but because her time in the spotlight came and went all too quickly, and she didn't act when the chance was there. The endgame certainly wasn't all her fault. In years gone by, this outcome was far less common. So let's show her kindness, but never encourage girls to follow her path. She is a warning about what can happen when you buy into what modern society tells you to do.